Welcome to Booksolve, and as you can see, I'm sporting my brand new Wolves shirt, ready for the new season starting in September. And I'm hiding away the logo for the betting company that's across the front of it because I hate betting and I loathe betting companies. Fortunately, they're all getting banned and won't be able to, in English clubs at least, won't be able to display them on the front of their shirts from next season. And next season, it's Wolves' 150th anniversary, so we're hoping for, they've promised a totally new and exciting kit that reflects a bit of the history of the club and hopefully uses a colour that's a bit more old gold than the yellowish tones that we seem to prefer these days. Anyway, enough about football. Great sport, though it is. Let's get on to books. Is it John Scoggin, Edward IV's infamous court jester, who enjoyed burning people alive for a laugh? Or a salad-fearing curd called Gaffer? Or a man who guards Beckley Woods with a samurai sword and a pregnant terrier? These are questions posed by Book 10 in my series of 100 Great Reads, and it's truly a modern classic. And at 900 pages, it's quite a monster. Wonderfully described by someone as a Pynchian hauntology meets British domestic surrealism. And the Booker Prize website claims it's a book about invasion, obsession, displacement, and possession, about comedy, art, prescription drugs, and chiropody. It is Nicola Barker's Darkmans. There we are. Fabulous front to the, which isn't attractive. Very much so. So, although the setting's mundane and contemporary, Ashford, Kent, Barker transforms that into a kaleidoscopic mythic battleground between the modern and the medieval, between banality and madness. And the book isn't plot driven as such, but rather it's state of mind driven. Barker uses line breaks, italics, odd punctuation, and sudden perspective shifts to convey tension, comedy, and psychological fragmentation. The characters are all eccentric, hyper real, deeply odd, and disturbing. The central theme of Darkmans is how the past never truly dies. It leaks into the present, manipulating and haunting the action. The 15th century court jester, John Scoggin, though long dead, becomes a malevolent force influencing modern characters. He's not ghostly in a traditional sense. He's more like history invading consciousness. And reading Darkmans is an unsettling experience, and it takes some getting used to. There's an ever-present sense of cultural tension and class friction mixed in with an unpredictable absurdity. Barker's experiments with language, voice, and perspective, and it gives a disruptive narrative which it gives a novel a staccato feel which after a while you begin to ride with. A Reddit contributor said this of the novel: the book is a hypnagogic hallucination, and Darkmans is a very modern book about invasion, obsession, displacement, and possession. Well, I think we've repeated that, haven't we? So I must have picked that up. That must have been picked up in two places. And the main character is the past, which creeps up on the present and whispers something quite dark into its ear. I think, again, that's a quote that's used in a number of reviews here and there. And I like books that invoke suburbia and then subvert it. They always remind me of David Lynch's film, Blue Velvet, where the white picket fences and the manicured lawns of middle-class America hide something much darker and grimmer. Ellen is one of the central characters in Darkmans, and along with her husband Dory, who may or may not be German, and their son Fleet, either of whom may be channeling a spirit from the 16th century. This John Coggins or Darkmans. And in his review, Will Self, picks this extract when her character, she's a chiropodist, is introduced. Ellen liked the clean very much. Well, of course she did. She had to. But she also loved the dirty, the malformation, the bump, the crust, the fungus. To Ellen, a foot was like a city, an infection where infection was the bad within, and she was the oh dear, you haven't messed that up, Kevin. Let's read it again. To Ellen, a foot was like a city, an infection, and infection was the bad within, and she was its ombudsman, making arrangements, sorting out problems, instituting rules, and offering warnings. On a good day, she was a superwoman, a Superman, or a Wonder Woman, doggedly fighting foot crime and the causes of foot crime. Usually, when all was said and done, the ill-fitting shoe. Okay, so it was hardly the Riddler and the Penguin, but in a serious head-to-head between the violent encounter with either of one of those two comic book baddies and an 8-hour minimum wage shift behind the bar of a happening Ashford night spot with a corn the size of a quail's egg throbbing away under a strappy section of your brand new knockoff Manolo Blahniks. Well, it would be a pretty close call. Now, I imagine most people would enjoy the humour in that passage, but I've got an unusual relationship with humour. To me, the comic always distracts from work on trying to treat as literary, and I just don't see the humour as I read. I pass it by with not a smile, but a recognition of the sort of self-deprecating sarcasm that comes over and conjuring something funny when you're actually being serious. And I sort of treat it as daring rather than a quirk. Anyway, Will Self goes on to say that along with the character of Ellen, there's mixing it up with them are father and son Cain and Bede, a salad-fearing Kurd, and the various Broads who were my favourite characters in the book, including the Keith talent-like builder Harvey, and Kelly, who likes her humour nice and vulgar. And he puts the punchline I'm thinking of is, good Lord, that's where Brian's been parking the Audi. Keith Talent, of course, is the protagonist in Martin Amis's book, Money. And vulgarity, again, is something that bounces off me and doesn't really make us smile. I'm repulsed by vulgarity, and in novels I appreciate it as an indication of a character's uncouth personality. And in real life, I will judge people that use vulgarity, especially if they're educated and could use better language. And yes, I say better language. In fiction also, but it doesn't mean that I'm precious about crude language. One of my favourite books, to be featured later in this series, so I won't say what it is replete with swearing. And I'd be utterly disgusted and repulsed, replete with swearing. I'd be utterly disgusted and repulsed by any adult who thought that it was amusing to hear, or even worse, teach a toddler to use a swear word. It's really, yeah. Anyway, back to the book, I think. Will Self, I think, is correct in calling the novel loose and baggy. There's many pages as it is, how else could it be? But also praising it for having style and aplomb. And it is these latter two virtues that captivate me. If a book lacks style, then I always feel as though it's just part of a excuse me, lump and mass of other books, and it's an admission that the book's nothing special. And we're only able to read a limited number of books in our lifespan, and every book we read should try to be special, to hold some kind of revelation for us. Well, it seems sort of weird now to be naming the main protagonist of the novel, Daniel, a man struggling with a debilitating skin condition and an increasingly fractured grasp on reality. John Scoggins, the jester for whom Darkness gets its title, is not just haunting him, though. His sphere of influence extends to Ashford itself. Ancient ruins and modern developments sit side by side, creating a sense of temporal dissonance that mirrors the characters' internal struggles. And the novel's thesis is that the past, particularly the more violent and uncomfortable aspects of it, leaves an indelible mark on a place and its inhabitants, influencing their present-day experiences. And as we experience a lot of this through Daniel's fevered awareness in a stream of consciousness mode, Darkmans isn't an easy read. His hallucinations and delusions smudge the plot across the page so that it can be difficult to follow what's going on. But I think it'd be a mistake to overlook the point that to assess or notice how Daniel's condition affects and causes damage to his closest relationships with friend and family. There's a sense in which the book does provide a commentary on mental illness. I've got some quotes from the book which will help in illustrating the style of the writing. Let's do those, shall we? History was a heavy physical thing. It pressed down, it squatted. It had mass and a smell and a weight and a texture. It could build up in the corners of a room like lint, or it could slither inside you and root around in your guts. It left marks, scars, little signs, strange unaccountable ticks. His hands moved without him. They weren't his hands. They wore his skin, but they were doing things he couldn't control. Ancient things, gestures, mudras. It's as if some other will, something cracked and laughing, had slipped into him while he wasn't looking. There was something behind him. Not a sound exactly, more a thinning of the air, of time. Like the room was stretching, breathing, and then a footstep. Or the memory of one. He turned, but no one. Still, the sense of something watching, grinning. And the final one. He made the sandwich slowly, deliberately, layering ham and pickle with the solemnity of a man laying bricks. This was what he could control. Bread, butter, a perfect triangle, sharp knife, clean cut. Darkmans is a book that will leave an impression on you if you've got the desire and richness of blood to absorb it. I've seen some. I couldn't find a review of Darkmans that anybody had done on YouTube, but there are a few of her other books, and in the main, people don't seem to like them. There's always this undercurrent of people going, "Oh, that's just pretentious." It's not, because it's not linked to moving the plot along, but is doing something else at the same time that maybe just seems to make it harder to read. Or why are you doing that? It always seems to me to be the cry that some readers make when they're tackling this kind of work. But there we are. it's the kind of stuff that I like and appreciate, and that's where we say. So at that point, I shall say cheerio from Brooksall, and see you next time that I stick up a video, which hopefully will be quite soon. And we'll see what book I have in store for number 11 in the series of 100 Great Reads. Cheerio, bye.